can we just take a moment to appreciate that this game even exists? I played the Callisto protocol and decided to take my time and replay the game to be as fair as possible with it, because I don't want to encourage a purchase or deviate someone from doing so, but remember, these are personal experiences we're talking about, and in the end, my opinion means as much as you want it to mean to you. There will be some light spoilers, mainly because of some locations and enemies, but no story spoilers or big events. So if you are concerned about that, you can always listen to this video and you'll be safe. However, some of the stuff I'm going to mention relies a lot on visuals. The Callisto Protocol is a survival horror game. Even though there are a lot of comparisons, I told before that we shouldn't think about this as a copy of Dead Space, and I feel like a lot of disappointment comes from that, unfortunately. And I can start this by saying that it is not the most scary game out there. This is more of a sci-fi game that is marked by the eerie ambience and the tense moments that you live throughout it. Some of the scary bits can be very predictable, but that is something for an entire different video about how horror is losing its shine since the audience is getting used to a lot of the usual methods that the developers and filmmakers opt to utilize. But this isn't something that bothered me that much. The cheap jump scares, yes, I think I would prefer not having them, or as many as there are here. But, and this is a big but, the sci-fi stuff and the atmosphere are perfect. This I wouldn't change at all. The story is very simple, so much so that it may not be the most interesting thing to you while you're playing. This actually reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 2 and the remake, for example. These are games that have a story, sure, but they are never the main focus, and you end up enjoying them for what they have to offer other than that. Horror tends to follow this path for the better or worse, and it happens in the Callisto Protocol too. But if you enjoy old school sci-fi, this will be right up your alley. The first thing you'll notice, however, is how the game looks. The Callisto Protocol is one of the best looking games I've ever played. It all comes together thanks to the incredible art direction, level design and attention to detail that is hard to deny when you get constantly surprised every time you move in the game. The developers did unbelievably good in this aspect, and I feel this is something that is not getting enough praise. The visuals are a core component of the Callisto Protocol. It contributes to the unnerving factor in a big way, and even though this is a horror game, you can't help but ask yourself, why is every room I enter so beautiful? It has this powerful visual impact that glues you to the scenery, and I believe lighting is everything. Not just global lighting, but lights that are meticulously placed in the environment to elevate each room, attending to what the developers want the player to focus on. Their positioning, intensity and color are especially important in a game like this because they guide the player to specific points, and they can also convey certain feelings during a particular part of the story or an upcoming gameplay heavy moment. Paired to the lighting is the high quality of the meshes and the materials and how these surfaces react to it. And then the mix of colors. Blues, yellows, reds, oranges and greens make these scenes pop a lot more, and these are some of my favorites. Note that you'll find some shadows and objects popping in from time to time. This might happen because of some bugs, but I would definitely see this as something that is done to save on performance. There are some cases that clearly scream that, since they occur in places that not everyone will notice. The characters are also excellent, even achieving photorealism at times. I thought about this since the moment they showed Jacob with the helmet on. The contrast between the somewhat dark environment around him and his illuminated face makes every small movement seem much more real. To be fair, the animations in this game are top notch, and the motion blur actually helps smoothing out what I consider to be very smooth animations already. From the crawling in the vents to swapping gun mods, you can see how heavy the motion captures were used, and they are glorious. But what horror game is it if it doesn't have a compelling soundscape to match its visuals. Sound is half of this game. If sound isn't right, nothing is. And the Callisto Protocol has this awesome atmosphere that I find impossible to dislike. Even if you don't want to, you'll be immersed in it anyway. It is that good. So I played the game on PlayStation 5 with headphones. The volume was way up there and the room was dark. And you know, with horror games, if you ain't playing at night, you ain't playing it right. DualSense in hands, I started to move. And you instantly get this is one of those games that will provide you feedback on everything. And I mean everything. You take a step, vibration. You swap guns, vibration. You get close to a fan, you die. I mean, vibrations. The first time I got close to one was so cool. The sound changes when you approach, from the bassy frequencies to the more defined high ones, since you're next to its blades. The camera starts to shake violently to tell the player is dangerously close to them and about to get ripped to shreds. The haptic feedback you get from the controller is something else. Seriously, making use of the controller's features in this way, pairing it to almost every significant sound to the experience, elevates this game to the next level of immersion. But something that every platform will have is an unsettling ambience and music that follow you throughout the journey, and no matter where you are, it makes the air feel much more tense, with the suffocating drones and the paranoid-inducing sounds from beyond the walls. There is rarely a moment of silence, and you might think that is too much, but it actually works beautifully, considering that it wants you to be alert at all times, also favoring the horror aspect of the game of not knowing when something will appear right by your side. Lovely. The combat with melee and guns sounds great. The biophage monsters sound very good as expected, but nothing special in my opinion, and I wish they would make my skin crawl a little bit at least. But I have to say, opting for a longer time when an enemy is going through the vents was brilliant, because you hear it coming your way, you get the idea from what direction, but you're never totally certain that is the vent is coming out from, and that's quite disorienting, which in horror means very good. Using music and sound design for great visual moments was also a highlight, and it hits you harder because of it, no doubt. I experienced like 2 sound glitches, nothing major, but it was noticeable and had to do with walking between rooms. I don't know if it was done on purpose, but the sound drops a bit abruptly. The voice performances are quite good as well, and with faces this realistic it works very good. Sometimes the lip sync isn't great, and for the same reason you notice it even more. What about the gameplay? What is the Callisto Protocol anyway? Well, I can say it is no Dead Space at all. I don't even consider it a spiritual successor, and I said it in a video before that having a melee approach would fundamentally change the entire gameplay of Dead Space, and the Callisto Protocol will be its own thing. But before I talk about combat, let's just look at how this game operates from a bird's eye view. Even though the Callisto Protocol is action-oriented, it is a slow burn game, and that's something that I haven't seen being mentioned that much. Letting the tension build and taking your time to soak in the scenery is crucial to the experience.
JC is here for you. Have a united day.
It is a very linear game. You almost always have a clear path and know where to go and what to do. However, this might differ in a few occasions, because there's room for light exploration. Normally this happens when 2 or more ways are presented to you, and you must make a choice for the time being, not always knowing which path to take to reach the objective. In these side areas you will find supplies, more enemies to deal with, and maybe some interesting stuff. Other than that, not much else. There is no map in this game, so you can check if you're going in the right direction or not, and if you go to the objective, you might lose your opportunity to get some supplies as the door behind you closes permanently. To be honest, this didn't happen to me, but I think it is a possibility. What saves it is the level design that tries to show you where you need to go, but even that doesn't help in every case. But I liked it, I really did, because in some moments the game emphasizes a side area more than the main objective, asking you to explore it before you leave. This is the core gameplay. You explore, you fight, you pick up consumables, sell items, buy upgrades, and that's it. But every action seems important. Everything you do has weight to it. When you start the game, the inventory is awfully small and you want to pick as many items as possible but just can't, and you're obliged to leave some behind. I didn't like this on my first playthrough because I had this mindset of doing well in combat and conserve a lot of ammo for later parts, but the game doesn't reward you for this, and in my opinion it needed some more balancing regarding item quantity and placement. On my second playthrough, however, it was fine, and this time I knew I couldn't pick up everything, so I started spending a lot more, and it was way more fun. Nonetheless, this is an issue that needs to be addressed in a future title. I don't think they will change that in this one, so basically, spend it, baby, spend it. Another thing that has a lot of weight is Jacob. Controlling him is awesome. It feels good when he walks or runs, and for me the weight is perfect for this game and adds a lot to the gameplay. Just make sure you turn up that camera and aim sensitivity. The default settings don't make much sense, to be honest. And now, the combat. Where to start? The combat involves some skill, I might say, but the concept is pretty simple. You dodge, you attack, you shoot, you dodge more and more. In fact, there's a lot of dodging, and while I agree the execution is not the best because of the controller mapping, I didn't find it to be much of an issue myself. The combat in general is way better than I thought. Hell, I even felt like a badass on my second playthrough, dodging, attacking and shooting weak points, all of this while using the grip for some effing good combos, and hearing all of these crunchy sounds together and seeing monsters falling apart is so satisfying. Combat seems to be in the center of discussion, and I think it is being a bit blown out of proportion. The dodging, for example, is super easy to get, and I've seen some people complaining and saying that it doesn't work with groups of enemies, and that's actually the point. For groups, you have to change your tactics, shoot more, use the grip to clear the way, and when you think it is the right time, then you go and melee attack them. And when the enemies get closer again, you get some distance from them and react accordingly. I don't know, I really had a good time with it. It is far from perfect, but it clicked for me. I think there's a huge misconception about the guns in this game. Use them, abuse them, but in combos. Shooting guns from afar will not have the same effect as using them in a combo. You'll be shredding enemies in no time. But this applies to the most basic of enemies, and there aren't many of them, unfortunately. And the boss fights, they are not good. I mean, one of them I liked, but when you pair one-hit bosses with other enemies, it falls apart and it's frustrating at times. I'm okay with one-hit bosses. A lot of the tension in these sections comes from that. It is an entirely different challenge and you have to be more strategic with your positioning, but having more enemies at the same time just doesn't work. I would much prefer bosses that would take a large amount of health from you, but you'd still have to deal with the smaller monsters. So yeah, overall combat felt challenging but rewarding. It needs some tweaking and the boss design is something that needs to be addressed. One more thing I forgot to mention that I found so cool: the enemies will actually follow you in the level in some awesome ways, even when you think you are safe. I can only talk about the platform I played the Callisto protocol on, but it seems like it is the most stable one so far. Playing on PS5, the performance was good. I thought it would be much worse than it is. Most of the time you're in the 60 FPS mark, but every time you walk a bit further, there's a frame drop, and in specific areas it can be a bit jarring. Thankfully, this game isn't that fast-paced and you get used to it pretty quickly. I heard the Xbox Series X version is not that bad too, but the PC port of the game is simply unplayable as of right now. And there's no excuse for this. The game obviously needed much more time in the oven to correct its performance issues, since it can be frustrating and limit a game's potential. The Callisto Protocol is a game I'm glad I played. While some of the critics make some good points about its issues, mainly regarding performance and some gameplay aspects like the bosses, which are totally fair, I believe that there are some that are so personal that you either hate it or love it. No one will tell you the game is perfect, it is definitely not, but what I got from it is pretty special, and I loved a lot of what it does. It reinforced everything I thought about it pre-release. I think the best thing I can say about it is that I want to play it again. It left me wanting more, and I hope we see it again in an even better form. I mean, even though I had a great time, I would certainly change a few things, like the level design to make it more connected, have more enemy variety, reduce the jump scares, and maybe take a more psychological horror approach, because it had a bit of it, but it wasn't enough. And the big one, more content. The game is seriously lacking in content, and in terms of replayability, it follows the old school path and it doesn't even offer a new game plus mode, which is a bummer because I think everyone would have much more fun if they had all the upgrades on subsequent playthroughs, and it would be perfect to experiment with the combat, and maybe that would actually make it click for them too. If you found any of this interesting, then you should definitely play it. That's all I'm going to say. I find it difficult to recommend buying something since you may feel different about it. I bought it because I couldn't wait any longer and I wanted to talk about it as soon as possible, but what you get from this game is the game itself and nothing more. Great visuals, engaging combat, and awesome atmosphere, a one-shot experience that you can visit from time to time, but if you're concerned if you're going to enjoy it or not, then in that case you probably should wait. But that's it, this is my take on the Callisto Protocol. I wanted to provide a different perspective on this game so you can have more information about it and whether or not a purchase is justifiable. But I hope you enjoyed the video and I will be waiting for you on the next one.